15, and that says it's 4:46.
All right. How you going, Liz?
Hello, hello. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you going?
Good, good. I don't know. There we are. How are you?
I think we're live. I think we're live, so that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, finally. It's finally here. I feel like this has been a long time coming. We haven't been able to, well, we haven't had a live show in, oh my gosh, besides like Boston and New York marathons, we haven't had one where we do like live Q&A for quite a while. So this is
Yeah,
really exciting. Glad to be here.
yeah, no, it's really exciting. It's fun with the magic of technology to have someone in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and someone in the States, and we get to chat about things that we're pretty passionate about, and that's wellness, longevity, and running. So I can't wait to hear your take on things, and maybe we'll get some interesting curly questions from some of the listeners. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it should be good. So first of all, I want to hear about your race that you did last night. You did a 10K race on Tuesday.
Yeah, yesterday. So randomly, I got a message from one of my friends. 10K tonight. It's free. It's free. I mean, I was okay. Yeah, it's
Mm.
free. I'm sold. Then I'll be there. So I had a run planned on my schedule and ended up hitting there. So just a little background about me, like um, my run experience, if you will. I've done like 50K, a few half marathons, but in the last 6 months, I've had a few setbacks, injuries such as tendonitis in my big toe. And after that, I don't know if some people who may be jumping in and watching here, I did a video on my low iron, my ferritin levels, because it was this random fatigue I kept feeling. And it was for years actually, and it just was affecting my performance, and it was getting tired easy. So I'm literally in like a rebuild phase right now. So that was that point to all that. So I'm trying to rebuild my running back up. I don't have a ton of mileage or kilometers per week right now. It's very you'll probably see me at like 8 miles for the week last week or this week or things like that. So I'm literally kind of starting from the bottom and just listening to my body as I work my way up. So I went into this 10K yesterday like, ooh, I've got a training run to do anyways, and it'd be just fun to be around people and do this. So I hopped in, I got on there, and I just did what my workout was scheduled as. I had it uploaded to my watch, and so the first 10 minutes was just very easy. Everyone blew out the gate, and I was just little old me running my own pace, keeping my cadence high, and just moving along. And then when my beep went off on the watch, it was go time. So I was playing around with power based training, so kind of in like the zone 3 to 4 for about 15 minutes, came back down to 10, down for 10 minutes, and then went back up for another 15 minutes and just finalized it. I was really glad I went through that though, because there's a lot of hills on that race. So can't wait to do it again, but joined a new run club and everything, so it's kind of exciting. I haven't been part of a run club in years either. So
Yeah, it's nice to have community, isn't it? It's really nice to tap in and join in with other people when you're doing sessions. And look, Oliver's just chimed in with a question saying, "What's the best way to improve VO2 max?"
oh, great
And
question, Brad.
yeah, I
You
think
took
that's a really
that
good
one.
question. Yeah, so I'll give my quick answer, Liz, and then you can let me know what you think. But for VO2 max training, I tend to get people thinking about what their best 5 minute effort is, and then I do that for maybe 15, 30, or 45 seconds. So maybe depending on where they are in their training program, I like people running fast and at that VO2 max type pace, which is, as I've said, 5 minutes. What's the best pace that you can hold for 5 minutes? And then we do that for shorter segments of that, so 30 seconds, maybe do 4 to 6 to 8 over a few weeks, just to get used to that sort of VO2 max, that energy system. But it's really important not to do that too early on in a training program. You want to make sure you got a bit of a base first, otherwise you can create a little bit of injury if you're putting too much force through tendons and muscle tendon junctions. So it's always good to have that aerobic base first before you start throwing in too much speed work. What are your thoughts, Liz, on that one?
No, I have to totally agree. VO2 max, I feel like someone just said a really great quote too, including when it was like power as well, like regarding power training. But like hitting those speed sessions is really important, that you're not doing a whole ton of those in 1 week. You're not doing more than one or two. Like, you're a beginner runner. Honestly, your VO2 max increases a lot quicker. Like, you'll have quicker improvements if you are dialing in your programming, you're dialing in your speed work each week. So you're going to improve quickly. It's that point when you start to plateau that you might want to start looking at your program and like, am I doing too much speed work, or could I add a little bit more? And just feeling it out, really.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think like one of the biggest issues I have with athletes is they tend to go out and train at the same pace every run without really going through those gears. And I always say to people, look, any race that lasts more than 2 minutes is going to have more of an aerobic sort of bias. So it's really important to have that beautiful, I love the 80-20 shift. I like 80% of a runner's week is quite aerobic, slow, if you will. And then that allows you that platform to really get the most out of that sort of 20% of anaerobic type work, the speed work, or even that tempo type work. And so a lot of people will think to run fast, they've got to run fast, where I think, actually to run fast, you need to run mostly slow, which is kind of goes against what a lot of people think. But it's a fun, joyous process when you get all those jigsaw pieces in place, and you understand that actually to run really fast, you want to make sure you've got that lovely base of running slow first.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have to agree with that 80-20. When I found that, and actually you kind of find that I found that through the run experience. I've been running with the run experience like as a customer since like 2016, I want to say 2016, 2017. And, once I started on those programs, instead of like before I became certified, like knowing how to build an actual program is now helpful now that I know that. But before I knew that, having programs out there are usually just like kind of cut and dry spreadsheet workouts. Mileage is specific. But most of the run experience programs were already built that way. Like, you're doing a lot of easy running, especially as a beginner. But even as the advanced crew, in like the marathon and half marathon, you're going to get that 80-20 for sure. But yeah, I like running slow. I like running long. I'm an endurance person. I have to say that yeah. I guess it's easy for me to run long, like go out and run for hours versus like getting up speed. And this is very opposite of what I used to be when I first got into running, because all I want to do is run fast. But that led to burnout, which led to injury. So
Yeah, I think, and that's right. And I'm kind of the opposite now. I like running short and fast and less going long, where I used to do a lot of ultras and marathons. Now I'm running more half marathons, 10Ks, 5Ks, and even going down to miles and 800s. I'm having a lot of fun with that. I'm sort of getting back to my high school days, reminiscing and having some fun. We've got a really good question from James Sawyer. He's saying that his next goal is to run an ultra. He's run a few marathons, and how does he start training for an ultra? So Liz, I reckon you're the perfect person to answer that question. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and then I'll chime in with anything that I think might be helpful.
absolutely. So with my own personal experience with training for my first ultra, which was 50 kilometers, I gave myself like a 6-month time period, because the longer you're going, I feel like the longer or the easier or like more can go wrong. So having that experience of like, okay, so my first 4 months, so I actually started in like December of 2017, and took those 4 weeks to make a solid, consistent weekly running. Like, I am running on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, or whatever it was at the time for me. I think it was random because I had I didn't have your standard 9 to 5 job. So I was like running around that schedule. So typically, after having a couple half marathons or marathons under your, I mean, you want to go to 50K. I feel like going to that 50K is going to be a little bit easier. But if you're thinking 50 miler, 100 miler, yeah, like having that consistent run base. And I mean, this is something I have actually personally experienced, especially in the last 6 months with my injuries and issues with my ferritin levels, is that like the more you've got that consistent base going, the more time that you've had on your feet and your body is able to get used to it, the better it will respond as you are applying more mileage each week. So really getting ready for an ultra is, first of all, what has your running looked like for the last 2 to 3 months? And you have to promise me that, depending on like what you're looking at, if it's like a 50-kilometer race, promise me that you've been at least like 24 miles a week on average for those couple months, those 2 to 3 months, because that first week, depending on what program you go on, and there's quite a few different books you can get out there as well for training programs. I personally use the marathon program out of the Run Experience, and I just tweaked it from there. So I didn't really do a hell of a lot of tweaking. I'll be honest with you. I pretty much stuck to it, and it got me through a 50-kilometer race with tons of elevation. So really, I would say also, and a lot of people may argue with us on this, but getting a good strength training regimen in, and I mean like at least a couple times a week, where you are putting in the single leg work, the core work. I know you're not doing anything too speed oriented when you're thinking marathon, ultra marathon, but getting some of that stamina up is also a good thing. It's always a good thing. So like box jumps, jump squats. But those slow and controlled movements, isolated movements, are really good for building your body to be ready for that. So yeah, so make sure that you've been consistent for the last 2 to 3 months. B, or number one, number two is definitely find a plan that is going to meet you and where your body is right now, and add in that strength training a couple times a week. And I know a lot of runners like, no, I want to run. And to become a better runner, you have to run. It's like, yeah, but you also need to support your body. Like a runner is an athlete, and every other sport will actually have its drills. It will actually have its strength and conditioning towards that sport. And running is really no different.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the other thing to add in is you really want to make sure that like your one big run a month, or even if you've got a run split over a weekend, make sure that you drag in some friends to do it with. Make sure that you make it a little bit of an adventure. Go and plan to do it in a really beautiful place so you can engage with nature. And it's really important to make the whole process fun and joyful. And I think the best thing to do that is to engage with nature, our beautiful natural world. So wherever you live in the States or the world, you can hopefully be able to do that. And then also make sure you get some fantastic, motivated, like-minded people to come along with you. Even if they can't go the whole way, get them to meet you for the last half or the first third of the run. But really organize that meetup and nature aspect in that long run, that big run that you might do once a month, to complement everything else. And I totally agree with the strength work. I get all of my athletes doing core work, and there's some great follow along videos in the Run Experience app and also on the YouTube channel, just to really build that core. And as we've talked with, we talked with Dan yesterday, and he was saying that a lot of ultra runners really feel their core fails after a bit of time. So if you can do some core strength work, it's really going to help your ultra running.
Oh yeah. Awesome. I was just taking a peek over here in our comments, and I just real quick, I see that Delo Low, love this channel, but I wish you guys were in Virginia. I just want to let you know, we do have a member of our team who is nearby to Virginia. I'm East Coast. So yeah, just so you are aware, we got a lot of people popping in, just saying hi. And
yeah, which is really cool. And I think there's a
Yes.
really a nice question from Debbie too, and she was just saying, like, how does she work on building her anaerobic base? And she was saying that she's got a really good aerobic base, and how do you build that anaerobic base? And I think we can circle back to what we said at the start, and that was make sure that you've got that aerobic base 80%, and then you're working on that speed or that sort of threshold work, and the 10-20% rest of the week. So just make sure you don't try and overreach with it. You just sort of slot it in on maybe 1 or 2 sessions a week, and then just be consistent, and then you'll find that you'll just build that. It's really important not to, especially when it comes to speed work or fast hill reps, bounding exercises, not to do too much too soon. Otherwise, you will ruin your chances of being consistent, because you'll just get an injury. So I think it's just having patience and just making sure that you just cycle things in and build consistently. Consistency is the key to endurance sport. It's the key to running. It's the key to a lot of things in life. And I think a lot of people don't have the patience and tend to try and do too much too soon. So that would be my advice on that, Sandra. What do you think, Liz?
Yeah, this is great. So, started running 5 years ago, and liking endurance. I think, Debbie, as women, we're pretty good at endurance naturally. I think if you ever look at the top people who are finishing, like, the longer the distance, the more you'll see like women are actually winning those races, So, so your challenge in building anaerobic base actually as women, and as we get a little bit older, our bodies are actually more primed for high intensity, but less volume. So you can actually make bigger gains, in that age category and above, by just, you're doing those hit workouts, high intensity, but you're not doing it for such long periods of time. So, and a lot of that, and just a quick note on nutrition, goes a long way as well. And that's especially once you do start hitting those hit workouts, that you're getting the appropriate amount of protein in, your carbohydrates are, you've got that balance, and healthy fats for women. I'm a huge fan of Dr. Stacy Sims. Her book Roar was a game changer for me for nutrition wise, because I love carbs, and I would just eat carbs, and I'm like, I'm a runner, I can just eat carbs all day, but I was not nearly getting what I should have been getting for protein. And that's something that I've worked on. But also, I think all of us, depending on, especially when we start like endeavor such as running or endurance or any kind of sport, we're like, you got to eat when you're hungry. So making sure that you are eating when you're hungry, when you're refueling within 15-30 minutes of each workout. That's all very important, that you're throughout the days, you're getting the right micronutrients. I'm a huge advocate on making sure you're getting like that magnesium, calcium, iron levels, for obvious reasons for me. And yeah, so building your anaerobic base is a little bit of tweaking you might have to do. But yeah, definitely hydration, nutrition is part of that, but start looking at higher intensity workouts that are not as long, and you won't be filling in like the whole week with that, but like little bite-sized chunks throughout the week.
Yeah, that's some really good advice. And just I want to name drop here a little bit, because I actually swim with Stacey Sims in the mornings. So Stacey's in my
Tell me that.
and so she is awesome. She lives locally. She lives in Mount Maunganui, New Zealand. And she does a lot of traveling to the States, obviously, but she is awesome. Her books are fantastic, and I've had to really upskill my game, because I've got a lot of female athletes, and she is just an amazing mentor. So yeah, can't recommend Stacey enough.
That's awesome. I heard actually on one of her podcasts with Dr. Kelly Starrett that she's in New Zealand, like she's still doing studies, and she's got like another book coming out. So
yeah, her book's just come out actually. So it's more about a woman, menopause and training, and she's just such an amazing advocate for women athletes. Yeah, she's great. Hey, we've got a really good question here too from Panagiotis. I might have absolutely wrecked that name, but he basically asks, hey, is there a perfect cadence? And look, there is a perfect cadence, and it's individual to you. So I think when you say, oh, you've got to run at 180, that's a nice thing to look at. But at the end of the day, we're all built uniquely. We've got different legs, and so there is a perfect cadence for you at that time on that course. There is a perfect cadence, but it's going to change all the time, and that's what happens when you get into a flow state. That cadence is going to change depending on how you feel, the terrain, the gradient. So there is a perfect cadence, and you know what? As a runner, we're always looking for it every moment of every run. So that's the answer to that. I think if someone just says, "Oh yeah, you've got to run at 180," I just think that's a little bit too generalistic. And it's really important sometimes if you've got a speed session to really just tap into yourself and how you're feeling, how's your stride length and your turnover, and work on those aspects to find the perfect efficient flow for you, and that will be the cadence that's working for you at that time. So hopefully that answers that question. It's a little bit ambiguous, but I think it's something that's important that you really check in with yourself every run and figure out what that cadence is for you at that time.
Yeah, the only thing I can add to that too is when you're saying, does it actually help to avoid injuries? Yes, when you're not trying to change it so quickly too. Like we have a lot of athletes that come to us and they're like, "Oh, I'm going for that 180." So they're completely changing their mechanics to reach that 180, but they're almost like running faster and harder than they normally would be for that, say that 80% of your workouts should be at that easy, which we mentioned earlier, and they end up running faster. So there's definitely a way to do it. We don't say, yes, go for that, go for a higher number, whatever it may be, just like he was mentioning. But yeah, it can help to avoid injuries because it does reduce impact if you're gradually working those in. And we feel the best way to do that is actually doing run form drills. And we have actually have a whole program based on cadence and increasing your cadence naturally. So, and actually we sprinkle those into our daily run as well, where you'll get the coach in your ear. You'll go for a certain amount of steps per minute, and then you'll come back down to your natural flow. So, just like those little tweaks, it's almost like you're doing like this conditioning on your body. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good question.
Oh, it looks like we got Sandra Badowski in there. I always have to give a shout out to her because she is one of our team captains in our app. She has been she's been with us for a long time, training with us, and actually got to meet her for the first time out in Bend, Oregon, when we had the Run Experience retreat. So really great. She's always in our community answering questions and helping other runners out. So just want to say hi and a shout out for her.
Yeah. Hey, there's another good question here saying, how do I figure out race pace? And that's another good question, because to figure out race pace, I think what you need to do, it depends on the race, and the more history you have in running, the better you are going to be at pacing. So, if you go out and do, a lot of runs, a lot of 5K park runs, for instance, you're just going to get better and better at knowing what you can go out at and hold, looking at the data that you've already done. So when you're retrospective with your data, if you know, say in a 5K park run, you go out at 5-minute K pace, but then fall towards 6-minute K pace at the end, then you've gone out too hard. And so you can then adjust and continue to figure out. So I think the easiest way to figure out race pace is to race more often, depending on the length, of course. With an ultra, that's going to be a little bit more difficult. But for 5 and 10K, I think it's about going out and doing some races and just looking at how you paced it and then adjusting depending on what the result was. So that's one very easy way to figure out race pace. What do you think, Liz? You got anything to add to that?
Yeah. Well, when you're first starting out, I think what I can add as far as maybe some advice. So when you're first starting out too, trying to find you have a goal in mind, oh gosh, I want to run a half marathon in under 2 hours, but your last half marathon, or maybe you never ran a marathon, but say your last half marathon was closer to like 30, etc. So you've got this idea of what that pace should be. And most of the like a lot of the times we'll have athletes who will jump in and their speed work will contain that race pace at what their goal pace is, which actually is a good thing once you start fine tuning things. But when you're first starting out and you're making such a large jump like that, it may be best to go off of your rate of perceived exertion instead, and what feels like you're going heavy. So with a marathon, half marathon, you're playing with the tempo world. Like that tempo is more like that comfortably hard pace. Like, it's, they say it's comfortably sucks, I guess, as well. But you're at that point where like, oh, okay, like, yeah, I'm breathing heavy. I'm working hard here, but I know I can hold this for a while. So, or like an hour. I could probably run like this for an hour and I'd be fine. So if it's just at that quite that level, and we would say it's like a 7 or 8 out of 10 on a rate of perceived exertion scale from 1 to 10. You're kind of at that race pace for you in your body where it is then. And the reason we like using that RPE as well is because your body, you're a different athlete every day you come to the table. So, where we don't, you don't really know like your pace, that your goal pace is, doesn't really know that you just did, 3 rounds of, 15 deadlifts at your 60 or 70% one rep max. And for that means it's like your moderately heavy deadlift. And now you're coming and you're going to do a speed work the next day. So that pace is probably not going to be easy to reach. Although we will argue and say, yes, do the deadlifts, definitely do the deadlifts, but when you come back the next day, do understand that, heading for that, maybe it's a 8-minute mile, 8.5-minute mile for, whatever your tempo speed work is for that day, may not make it quite there. But going by that feel and constantly tuning into how you feel, how does this feel? Is this an 8? Is this a 9? Am I more on the 9 side? Okay, let's bring it back. And just being honest with yourselves, because especially once we get these guys, they're awesome. They really are. These running watches, when you start looking at that run watch and you're getting obsessed with that pace, it's like all of a sudden the fun can get drained out really quick. So figuring it out, like Coach Brad said, is that, you got to race more perhaps to find that and seeing how you feel, because when you're at a real race, you're going to race and you're going to have that adrenaline pumping. So finding what that's like, don't look at the watch, analyze it later, know what you've done after, and take a look at what that is. And you can kind of decide, okay, from there, all right. Kind of a good thing is the half marathon and full marathon. If you're like, I have to argue to say, like, do a 10K race and see what that was like. See what your pace was at that. If you are at that level, unless you're building and you haven't quite made it to that. But if you're at that level where you can go out and do a 10K and you race that 10K, hey, you know what? You're going to have a good idea what your tempo is going to be.
Yeah, that's right. And one session that I give to a lot of my athletes before a half marathon, 3 or 4 weeks out, depending on where they're at, is 3 times 5K at their goal pace with a few minutes easy in between. And if they can't hold that on the third 5K, well, the goal pace is incorrect. And so sometimes doing a test session 3 or 4 weeks out from a race with long intervals and that mimic race pace is just a nice way to see where you're at. And I've had a lot of athletes that have gone into a race, done that session, and either and changed their goal pace up or down depending on how they felt at that session. So sometimes it's nice to do those kind of longer reps at race pace a few weeks out from a race, just to dial in and see where you're at, and then make an informed decision on that data on how you want to go out and attack that race.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to run easy. I think that's all of us, Laughing Guy. I had a lot of like running. It was, especially early on, you start running and every day you want to reach a new goal. And, I could do this a little bit faster, a little bit faster. That's how I ended up with I don't really even like to call it IT band syndrome because it's not even really the IT band that's the problem. But, that's how I ended up with just too much too soon. Too fast too soon. It's all these things that can compound. Um, they kind of like show the parts of your mechanics that may be in need of some help.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, absolutely. I think the big thing to understand about that slow training is that aerobic base building is not only great for your cardiovascular efficiency, but it's also fantastic for just gradually building strength in ligaments, tendons, muscle tendon junctions. So that the junction between the muscle and the tendon, and the junction between the tendon and the bone, it really helps strengthen all of that up in a really nice environment. And when I say environment, I mean that the body is not overly stressed, so it's able to just absorb that aerobic training and provide strength and stability throughout the whole system. So that aerobic training, I believe, is so integral to a training program. Once you learn to do that and to put it in, you'll get much better results because you'll be consistent. There'll be less injuries, and you'll be able to then really give those harder sessions more justice, and you'll get more out of them. So it's such an important part of a training program.
yeah, definitely. So we took a look. We're thinking that we think we got to the questions here. We did want to talk about today, like kind of our focus for today's call or today's video is longevity in running and health overall. And something that, well, Brad has been doing for how long have you been exposing yourself to cold water?
Yeah, almost 7 and a bit years now. So 7.5 years I've had a cold shower almost every morning. I probably can count on two hands the times I haven't had a cold shower in the morning. And then also I've done at least weekly ocean cold swims, like throughout the whole of winter without a wetsuit. That's almost weekly. And then I try and get in the ocean probably 3-4 times a week because I'm lucky enough to live right across from the ocean, and then some ice baths in the summer. So I've been doing deliberate cold exposure work for 7 years and just love it. And it's really becoming a little bit more fashionable now. I see over the last couple of years, there's more and more people doing it and catching on to the massive benefits, health and performance wise. So yeah, it's a real passion of mine.
Yeah. So I think early on, I will say, like, I was introduced to like ice baths very early on because of someone had suggested for recovery when I was training for 50K, and like you have those days you do the long run, you're out there for long hours, long periods of time. And I'd come back and just be beat. I mean, I used to do legs up the wall a lot and things like that, but someone had suggested, why don't you do like ice baths? And my first experience trying to do one, I think it was like in a big plastic barrel and ice. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't even I got a toe in and it was like, ha, no, this is not happening. Like, you guys are crazy. Who does this? Who does this? Bullshit. Excuse my language, but that's what I felt. So, it was like, oh, okay, fast forward a few years and I went to a retreat, a women's retreat, and we were suggested to take a 3-minute ice bath. So that was pretty interesting. I was dreading it. I was very afraid, but we had to do some breath work first. Actually, we used the Wim Hof method for breath work. And after we finished that, you're feeling pretty good. You're feeling like you can do anything. And then we'd warm up. So we warmed our body up doing like horse and like what kind of looks like Tai Chi, but I guess it's just something that Wim Hof made up. Just to, yes, the whole, and you're doing the hoo-has and everything.
Yeah, the horse stance. Yeah.
Yeah, I got in that water and it was all about control. So what I will say is, like, I don't as soon as I got in there, I realized that this is more a mental thing for me. Like, this is something that scared me, but I breathed through it. So what actually Laughing Guy is asking, what will the cold training do for us? Well, there's a couple of things that it will actually do. You're looking at a daily cold exposure. It's a stressor. Getting yourself used to being able to handle a stressor as it's coming in and breathe through it is not only good mental training, but it's actually good training for your body. Second of all, there's been numerous studies to show that daily exposure to cold will actually boost your immune system. And Brad, you can probably speak to more on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's some great studies out of Finland and Sweden that show that exposure to cold water, you're going to be less likely to get a respiratory disease. It's definitely boosts. It kind of just pricks your immune system and mobilizes it on a everyday basis, which means it's just strengthened. It's more robust. It's more resilient. One of the big things that I really like about it, from an endurance perspective, is that cold therapy has been shown to do something called thermogenesis, which is basically the body rewarming itself from the inside out. And from a cellular level, what that does is it makes your mitochondria, which are basically these little power houses within your cells, more efficient, more effective. So you're able to actually produce energy at a bit or just better. So for me, that's pretty exciting. So there's something where you actually create more brown and beige fat from white fat. So I didn't even know about brown fat 3 or 4 years ago, but apparently we're born with it as children, and then it slowly dissipates as we get older. But some adults are able to hang on to it more, and we can actually produce more brown fat. I mean, it's only a very tiny amount of our fat cells, but we can produce more by cold exposure. So it's really exciting. I think there's benefits not only from health and wellness, but also, I believe, performance. I believe that it improves us from an endurance point of view, as it improves metabolism and efficiency from a cellular level with the mitochondria. So that really excites me, and it helps me get in that cold shower every morning, because not only does it make me feel amazing afterwards due to the dopamine release, which we can go into later as well, but it also improves your cellular makeup from the inside out. So, it's just, why wouldn't you do it? I think everybody should be having cold showers, especially in the States. Isn't it summer over there for you guys? So you guys should have no problem doing that.
Yeah. Right now. So, about 70 degrees, 80 degrees, Fahrenheit over here, for right now, for this summer. That's what it gets to typically. We will have hot spells, but yeah, so I started in the winter, like it was still like March when I started my cold exposure journey, and started with the cold showers. And then eventually I have a lake right at my house. So I started getting into the lake at the end, where we still had ice on the lake. It wasn't completely sheet
Awesome.
over, but we still had some glaciers melting on the ice. And I decided to get in, and I did it every day. And until actually the water was warm. And it was like, well, I might as well go back to cold showers or ice baths. But truly, like, the cold shower is so much more accessible. There were other areas in nature that I could get into around here, where we've got a lot of cold springs, where there's, like rain runoff coming off a mountain nearby and things like that. So that was actually still pretty cold even in May. So that's what I like to do. But the cold shower, like I said, do it every day. And if I happen to get to something else in the day, like whether it's an ice bath or some sort of nature exposure, it's just so much easier. It's so much easier.
Yeah.
I will say, like, for me to get into a meditative state, so I started meditating first, starting in 2021. I started meditating almost every day. And by the end of the year, it became like a thing I needed to do every day. But to get into that meditative state, it's a lot harder for me. Like, this is just constantly going. So when I finally started the cold exposure, I will say that the moment my body hits that cold, this shuts off. It just shuts down. And there's no more chitter chatter. It's just breathing. So it's almost become more of a meditative thing for me than just sitting and meditating, although I still do both. For my mind to just finally calm down and be quiet. It's a useful tool for the world we live in, for sure. But for sure, cold exposure will definitely quiet things, and which you need every so often. So
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think simply cold exposure puts you in the moment. It puts you in the present pretty darn quickly. You're not thinking about anything else because your body just is so engrossed in the moment because there's a threat of cold there and you have to overcome that. So it's a really great way of just being present. And so that can be really powerful, again, from a wellness and a performance perspective. We actually got another question from Dev Runner just saying, how can I supercharge a marathon training cycle for top end speed? And again, I think we can go back to the start and say to supercharge your marathon training, and it's just, again, about making sure you've got that aerobic base in place first. If you've got that in place, then it's going to allow you to slow down the least and get as fast as you can for a marathon. So it's not necessarily about going in and doing sprints for a marathon. It's about having that aerobic base to allow you to hold that speed, because a marathon's not about going fast per se. It's about slowing down as little as possible. And so the ones that win the marathon are the ones that are able to hold that sustained pace rather than having that top end sprint speed. So I think that answers that. And I think the other thing we have to mention with the cold is the TRE. There's a cold shower challenge that starts on the 25th of July, which is going to be really exciting, where we get to take you through a 7-day challenge, and we're going to basically progress your time in the cold shower. I'm basically walking through it with you. Literally, I'm outside in my outdoor shower doing it with you.
In the winter.
Yeah, so it's going to be fun, and so I really encourage people to hop onto the app and look at that challenge coming up, and that's in July. And just get yourselves ready, because if we can get you for 7 days, if we can get you doing a cold shower every day, and you start to feel the benefits and you understand some of the why behind it, there's a really good chance that you're going to then entrench that habit, which is going to have multiple benefits over time. So I'm really excited about this challenge. Really excited.
Yeah, me too. Definitely a passion that I don't know, like I needed something this winter where I just had the two exacerbated issues back to back, once with the tendonitis in my foot, and then finding out that my ferritin levels, which actually was a godsend, because I took an inside tracker test to find this out, and this is something that my actual doctor had never tested before, and I've been experiencing fatigue for years. I would argue, even say that it's been happening since my 50K training. I would just like get through it and push through it, and like I just thought you were supposed to feel like crap all the time. I was like, well, I'm heavy into a training cycle, so maybe that's the problem. But eventually realized that it was something else going on. So but I will say, like, everything happens for a reason, and I turned everything over to, like, okay, what can I do for my recovery? What can I do for my mindset? What can I do here? And honestly, it's brought, I'm still on this journey. I'm up to 3.5 minutes on the cold shower though.
Nice.
So
nice.
yeah. So continuously just trying to get in there. Actually, I took one this afternoon instead of my normal morning, because it actually helps, almost like I get a jolt like I had a cup of coffee, but it just lasts longer for me. So
Yeah.
I love coffee. I gave up coffee. Spoiler alert for the next video on that whole inside tracker backup is that I got back onto drinking coffee. We'll just see how the results come though. Jamie Lemas, one of our TRE community members, actually is asking, easy running is RPE, and what if RPE feels easy if my heart rate is in the 130s and 140s? That's really a good question.
I think it's hard to answer that question without knowing individual data for what maximum and threshold is. So for instance, if your perceived exertion feels easy and your heart rate's in the 130 to 140s, well, if your maximum is 190, 200, that's probably fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if your max is, say, 160 to 170, then maybe it's a bit high. So it's difficult to answer that question without some individualized data. But I would say that if your running feels easy and you're able to maintain a conversation, speak a couple of sentences, and your heart rate's there, that's probably your run easy. You know, we're all built differently. Everyone has different heart rates, different maxes, and so it's just important to make sure that any information that we give is individualized. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Oh yeah, and as it heats up, Jamie, you are definitely going to feel the effects of that heat. And I don't know if maybe I've had a conversation with you before about this. Yeah, like I can say when I trained for my 50K, I did it throughout the winter. I was like running in blizzards. It was freezing out at one point at one day, and I actually ended up really enjoying it. And when it came time to train in the heat, I was like, how the heck did I do this in the past? Like, this is hard. So your pace is going to come down, and don't be surprised if you almost feel like you're at a walk and your heart rate is still kind of up. But that could be a couple of things too. Like, were you hydrated well enough before you started this run? Have you been hydrating well all week? I personally have been using a hydration tracker for a long time. So I'm making sure that I'm getting like 2 to 3 liters a day minimum, that higher end or more on days like I've gone long. So yeah, your heart rate is a lot to do with electrolytes and your hydration. So if you're finding that your heart is getting up there, well, did you take any caffeine as well? That's something I learned. Like, I don't like to work out after drinking my coffee, because my heart rate's already up here. It just gets jacked up. So I'll have my coffee afterwards or well ahead of time, usually after. But yeah, that heat will do it, especially the humidity here down on the East Coast of the United States. I know the more south you get, and actually here in Massachusetts, we can have real humid days. And that's the stuff that just zaps it out of you. So, you know, being sure to like remind yourself, like, okay, looking at the data, did I hydrate well? Am I taking in enough electrolytes? You know, have I fueled okay all week? It could be your heart telling you something if that's a high number for you. So for me, I would say that 130, and then this is exactly what Brad was saying individually, that 130 to 140 still puts me in like zone 2 according to Garmin. So I'm still kind of in that easier zone.
Yeah. Actually, there's another good question here from actually I've just lost the name, but someone talking about Harry Daniels. He's got a quadriceps tendon injury due to his cycling commute. He's training for a marathon, and what he should do about that. The first thing I do is make sure that your bike's set up correctly. I think a lot of times I see people that commute and their seats are a little low or even a little high, and that can actually create tension in the knee, creating that problem. So first of all, make sure you don't just treat the symptom, look at the cause and look at that seat height, make sure that's correct. And then the second thing is stretching and a little bit of controlled loading can be really helpful for that. And if you've got a really good physical therapist nearby, they can take you through that. But with tendon injuries, it's about getting the right amount of rest and then loading appropriately. Because a lot of people think they have to deload a tendon injury, where the research has shown tendons love load. So you've got to load it, but you have to load it within capacity and then build gradually. And then we can get you back running again. But first of all, definitely just make sure that bike setup is correct, because I see a lot of runners that don't get that right and can create injuries to hips and knees. So that would be my big tip to take away, Harry. But thanks for the question.
Yeah, that is a great question. Personally, having the tendonitis in my foot, it was exactly the same thing. Like, I didn't want to completely back off from everything. I was still strength training. I was still on the rower. I was still on the stationary bike, but just listening to it, because luckily it never tore. And that's essentially, if you're at this point where you know there's pain, there might not be a tear, which is good, then you're just going to want to keep doing what you're reducing, just like Brad said.
And I think another big thing that I really love is when runners learn to cross train so that you can train around an injury. So if a lot of runners, if they just run and they get injured, their whole world falls apart. Woe is me. They Yeah,
slip
they
into
go
a
into their
depression.
the depressed. It's not good. So a runner that gets injured, it's really good if you can cycle or you swim or you can do a bit of training in the gym with a rower or an elliptical trainer, because then you can maintain your cardiovascular system without that load, and you can train through an injury while you rehab it. So that's really important. It's one of the biggest things I get across to my athletes is I try and teach all of my runners to go and swim or cycle, because even if they're not injured, I want to have that base beforehand so that when they do get injured, because let's face it, most runners are going to get injured at least once a year. That's the average. That they can then turn to some cross training to help their physical and, more importantly, their mental state, so that you can keep training throughout those type of injuries.
Yeah, that's a great point. And got a couple other ones. Jamie did want to know how does he know if he's recovered for the next training workout? Chances are you're not always going to be 100% recovered for the next training workout,
Yep.
right? So Jamie, I know you're in our program, so I can say, like, if you're going to take, for example, you're in our half or full marathon program, you do your long run one day, and then the next day you've got that second long run, because that's how we suggest you train. You can get more time on feet with a little bit of recovery between. You're probably not going to feel 100. No, we'll probably say for sure 100%. You're not going to feel 100% for that next day's second long run. It is much shorter than the first one to start with, but you're probably not going to feel, but you'll probably be surprised at actually how well your body responds to it if you're doing all the other things, like your nutrition is good, your hydration is good, and you're sticking to everything as far as your strength training and mobility every day. Mobility, addressing those mechanical inhibitions that may be causing issues, down or up the chain.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Jamie, and I'd agree with everything that Liz has said. Especially on a hard week, you're probably not going to be recovered, but you should feel as rested as possible, and so that means just working on your big blocks in the wellness wall, which means that you've got adequate sleep, you've adequate nutrition, you've fueled well, within 20 to 40 minutes of that session, and then you've done your stretching, your flexibility, and your core type work. And for me, mobility is key, and that's that control through range. And I know on the Run Experience app, there's some fantastic follow-alongs, with some great yoga and some fantastic stretching routines, warm-up, warm-down routines. And that's really great to, sometimes you can take the decision fatigue away and just pop the app on and push play. And there you go. And you just follow it through after a long run. Because, like me, it's the last thing I want to do, but I know that I'm going to feel better when I've done it. And so it's a really good thing to put those little framework pieces in place to maximize the absorption of the training, and therefore you're going to get out of it what you need to. So yeah, that's really a really good question.
Yeah, awesome. So it looks like we just got the note from our producer in the background. I just have to say shout out to Corey. Thank you. He's got everything. He put everything together for us to make this possible. So, but we do have Laughing Guy said, so the cold shower is not a full shower. That is correct. And we challenge you to come into the app and do our cold shower challenge. Helen Brunner is another team captain of ours. Just real quick, she helps out a lot. She's been in our marathon program, half marathon, you name it. She's like doing it. Our 5K, everything. So she's actually, you're from New Zealand as well, Helen, right? So I'm just
brilliant, Helen.
Yeah, I feel like, oh, hey, wait a minute here. So shout out to you as well, Helen. Super awesome watching your posts every day in the community and helping all the other fellow runners in there. Yeah. So I think
that's really
welcome, Jamie and Harry.
Yeah. Oh, Invercargill. Helen's from Invercargill, so she's a really tough Kiwi. She's down right in the south there. It's a little bit colder down there. So they breed them tough down in the south of the South Island. So kia ora, Helen. It's great to have you along. It really is. Now we're going to be probably signing off the next sort of 5 or 10 minutes. So get your questions in. If there's anything else that you guys want to talk about, If you want to talk about the cold shower challenge, if you want to talk about wellness, longevity, any other curly questions that you just weren't sure who to ask, then please ask us, because we love curly questions. So get them in before we have to log off in 5 or 10 minutes time. But yeah, I mean, this has been great. I really enjoy just being able to sit down and chat. It's nice to sit down and spend some time with you, Liz, because otherwise it's usually just us talking about business stuff, but it's just nice to sit down and just chat. So that's really cool.
For sure. Two people on different hemisphere. No, you're on the same hemisphere as me, right? We're northern hemisphere.
No, I think we're in different parts of the world. You're in that north, I'm in that south.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, we're different parts of the world. I'm on a tiny little island, and you're on a big landmass. So it's pretty cool, But it's cool because I think we need more connection. We need more connection between people in different parts of the world. I think it's really special. I mean, we're all got similar things going on, and I think it's really just to get a little bit serious for a minute. I know I'm probably not allowed to, but there's a lot of division going on in the world at the moment, and I think it's great to build community. And what better way to build community than around something cool like running? So it gets me out of the bed in the morning. It's really exciting. So this sort of stuff really, it's just great. Really good.
Same. I think that's something about the running community is we're already diverse. So you go to your community, you go to your run club, you go into our app, the community there. It's, we're all there just to live happier and healthier lives. And we're just trying to figure it out as we go along and help each other out. So, I think that's something that I find solace in when I'm in the community.
Yeah, that's really cool. Really, really cool. I think someone was just saying that they couldn't find the cold challenge on the app, and I think that's going to start on July the 25th. Mm-hmm. So just be on the lookout for it. We're going to have a YouTube video a week or so before that, just explaining a little bit of the why behind it, some of the real benefits, and then we're going to just move into that challenge. So it's really exciting. I can't wait until that starts. So just be on the lookout for that.
Yep, it's not in there yet, so you're not missing it if you're searching for it. But it shall be coming soon. We're trying to keep it a secret before, so you can't look ahead. Like most of our programs and challenges, you can kind of look ahead to see what's going to happen. Probably not for this though. Probably not. Absolutely. Oh, we got Erin King in there too. Just quick shout out to Erin King. She's my girl. Can't do anything, like she's just my great team member as well, part of the TRE team, and can't say enough about you, Erin. You're great. Thank you for popping in as well, because you're on vacation.
Wow.
He's on vacation and popping in to see us still.
That's dedication and love right there. And Erin's got some amazing plant-based recipes on the app. She's got some delicious food. Whenever one of those photos pop up, you just want to race into the kitchen and make it. If I could buy it directly from her and get it shipped to New Zealand, I would. So definitely check that out.
Yeah, let's see. Erin, we have Coach Erin's recipe corner in the app, and she's constantly updating that with new stuff. So, and Jeff Loop, whole team here now. Yes, he is one of our video editors. Awesome guy, big muscles, love him.
His arm muscles are bigger than my leg muscles. He's a strong guy. He's a strong guy.
Yeah, huge advocate for lifting, and he's super great at what he does. His artistic skills, I would say, for all the stuff we do and need him for, amazing. Jamie's got another question.
This is a good one.
As I'm training for a marathon road race, do you think it's okay to take a training run to the trail? Will there be any adverse effects? No,
not at all. Because you're getting into nature, and also it's good to train on a bit of a softer surface every now and then. You don't want to train on the road all the time. I think you want to do some specific sessions on the road, but I think it's a great idea to mix it up. Get out onto the trails, get into nature, get into some greenery rather than just concrete. So I would say there are no adverse effects in that. Get out and do it maybe a bit more often. So please, if you can get onto the trail, if you can get into nature, get into a forest, and you can do that with other people, as I said at the start of this, I believe that's a really important thing for society. I think we need to plug that more. So get out and really engage with our natural world, with motivating, uplifting people. And I think that's a really important way to improve our mental health, improve society's mental health. So please do that, and bring some mates along with you.
Yeah.
Spread the gospel about running, because we need more people out there enjoying moving their body, and getting into this community.
Yeah, and to add, to include like what Brad said in the beginning of this is, when if something like trail running, like, yeah, I may be training for a road race, but if something is your passion, especially trail running, getting in nature, because I'm the same as Brad. I'm like 100% on that boat. Like getting out in nature is something I need to do for my own mental health. And if it's something that it will help you get through your training program, because it's something each week that you've scheduled and you're looking forward to it, that is gonna, like, oh, I'm running with mates. Oh, I'm out in nature. We go on random excursions. It could be a 4-mile run, but we got lost, and it's like memories are made. That's kind of like a lot of my runs ended up. I got a bunch of friends to come with me. Basically, we went through hell together, and we just got better, more bonded. And when I say hell, I mean we got lost. It was hot out. We ran out of water, like everything you can think of. But it's like we got so close. We bonded through those times, and it was something that got me so excited throughout the week to continue with whatever I had training during the week, because I knew that weekend, that long run on Saturday, was going to be with friends. It was going to be on the trails, and it was going to be an adventure. So yeah, you've got to do things that feed your soul. And for me, that trail running, being outdoors, getting dirt and mud on me, it feeds my soul.
Yeah, preach it, sister. That's exactly what I'm thinking. I think that's what holistic health needs to be talking a little bit about more, and that's that the physical, the mental, then that sort of soul side. It's about making sure that we're feeding all of them. You can't just work on one and negate the others if you want holistic health. And we need more people really working on those aspects, because look, we have a really sick society. Our society is really ill, and we have a health system at the bottom of a cliff. We really need to get at the top of that cliff and put in some of the self-empowerment stuff and really get us a lot healthier, so then we can thrive and then be of service to others. It's really important. So running is a big part of that. I believe getting out there and walking and moving in nature, it just does feed the soul, and it also works on your physical and your mental resilience. So yeah, absolutely love it.
Yeah. So it is at the end, and I don't know. We do have someone said it's called Tough Mudder Race. Yes, I'm an avid mud runner. I will say that. I love obstacle course racing. That's what I train for, actually. So
Yeah.
so there's the one more, and we'll say like this is gonna be it. I think we're a couple minutes past the hour. So but any tips for keeping your heart rate in zone 2 during easy runs? I find it really hard to keep it stable. And that is, I love the walk run, like the walk run walk method. You seriously, especially if you find yourself getting too high and it's maybe going to zone 3 a little bit, walk just enough time to get you in that lower zone 2, and then start trotting a little bit. So and it could just be that you haven't found your rhythm yet as well. But Brad, you could probably add to that as well.
Yeah, I think also it's just important you pick flat terrain for that run. You don't want to have any hills, because it just spikes your heart rate up quite high. So make it flat. Work on nasal breathing, so just breathing in the nose and out the mouth, relax the shoulders. And then I think another big one is just making sure that you just decrease that stride length, and just roll along nicely, and that'll really help keep that heart rate down a little bit. But I think, Liz, you're right. If you are finding it spiking up too much, just add in a little walk every now and then, just to keep that heart rate down, and that'll really maximize that zone 2 low heart rate type training.
Yeah, that cheating if you're walking thing is kind of like, I'll tell you, once you get into the trail running and ultra community, or just trail running in general, walking is like, okay, there's no shame in walking. Like, you power hike when you have to and things like that. So it's time on feet, and it's about allowing your body to adapt. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, we've got to, before we sort of close this out, Jason just come up with a good question too. Do you think that walking around the house with no shoes on could cause issues with Achilles tendon? Yes, it can. And a lot of the time what I do, so if you've got an Achilles issue or a foot issue, one of the biggest things I do with my athletes and my physio clients is actually to wear supportive shoes inside so that you're not wearing bare feet. So I'm an advocate for barefoot running. I think it's really good, but it's a time and a place for it. And when you've got foot and Achilles niggles, it's not the time. So yeah, absolutely. Make sure that you brace those feet up and give them a bit of a chance to recover and recoup. And that's going to really help get over those Achilles and foot niggles.
Yeah, we're all about strengthening your feet here. And something I will say I personally do is barefoot all the time, but I also do a lot of barefoot strength training as well. So if you're getting that strength training in specific for your feet, like you're doing the toe raises, you're doing heel raises while you're walking around your house, it's about blood flow too. So yeah, and like if you're new to that, yeah, that's when that support comes in. That's when we say, yeah, maybe that higher supported shoes are a good idea at that time. Because it's kind of like a crutch, right? It's kind of like when you're experiencing an issue and you need a little help, it's okay to put that little help in there. But gradually listening to your body.
Yeah. Yeah.
We love you too, Jamie.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That was awesome. There's one other question here I want to talk about. There's someone saying, what's your opinion on hex bar deadlifts? I think they're brilliant. In fact, I get all of my athletes doing hex bar or trap. I think some people call it trap bar deadlifts rather than the bar at the front, because it just helps sort of centralize the posture and the weight a little bit more. So I get most of my runners doing deadlifts, and I use the hex bar first and foremost before I get them doing the bar. So I'm a big fan of deadlifts, and I think it's a great thing to do.
Me too. I do barefoot deadlifts. So
Nice.
I do recommend working up to that though.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you everybody so much for showing up. It's been really fun. All of you popping in with your questions, and Brad, it's been really great talking with you and getting to know you more.
As well.
And yeah, so thanks again everybody, and you have a great night, morning, day, wherever you are.
Yeah. See you later. Thank you very much.